Yeah. For how many days?
Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday.
Was he stuck in a hotel the whole time?
Oh, no. You know that's his favorite place to be on.
Yeah. Wasn't it the same thing when he went to, was it Guam
Korea.
or Korea? Yeah. Did he go to Guam last year?
He's going to go to Guam probably this year.
I thought it was Diego Garcia.
Yeah, that's right.
Diego.
Yeah.
But that was all because of.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him out.
He has no intention of going back to Diego Garcia. Enjoy it being there that much because you could go fishing, but there's nothing else to do other than that.
And you can't access the internet, right?
Correct.
Well, my dad would love that. That's where I'll tell him to go. Yeah. I think Dad's been there before.
You'd have to write him snail mail to let him know how the Packers are doing.
If that would prevent him from texting me every day.
You have the ability to block numbers if you need to.
All right. Is there a volunteer to open us up in prayer this morning?
Oh shoot, are we live?
Go ahead.
Heavenly Father, thank you for all of us here together this morning, and thank you for Justin teaching, and may everything that he has studied to pass on to us, we take to heart, and be with everybody that's not here with us today. In your name, amen.
Amen. No one listens to my videos anyway.
That is not true.
I play him at night so I can fall asleep. That's not really true.
Well, it's sort of my fault.
Have you tried it ASMR style?
As long as I show up, I don't have to listen to your videos because I'm here in person.
Every once in a while I'll make the mistake and go back and listen just to try to improve upon.
Why would that be my mistake?
Have you ever listened to yourself talk? You sound completely different.
Yeah, I don't like
And I sound like a, it sounds like I speak really slow, and maybe I do, I just, in my head it feels fast. All right. Getting to the right spot in my notes here. I got a new laptop and the mouse pad is not built for big fingers. Okay, where did we leave off last weekend? Someone want to refresh my memory?
we're comparing the two charts and got up to, was it Rome? The sixth head on this side,
Okay.
or did you go beyond that?
No.
I know we didn't get into that into last one.
Okay.
I think we stopped there because that was going to be our discussion today.
Yeah.
Why it may or may not be.
Okay.
We were talking about beasts and Revelation, and then we went back to Daniel, and we looked at some of the examples in Daniel where the statue, and then also the other visions of, where you had the vision of the four beasts.
Right. So,
And then you brought up the charts to make some, show the comparisons between what's talked about in Daniel and what's talked about in Revelation.
good. Yeah, so we've been in Revelation. We looked at Dan and the statue, the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. and associated that with the other vision that Daniel interpreted. That was the 4 beasts. So in Daniel, the beast one was Babylon, which is the head of gold, the silver breastplate. The bear is Medo-Persia, and the bronze girdle is the leopard, which represents Greece. And then we correlated that to Revelation 12, 13, and 17 when it talks about the seven-headed beast or the seven-headed dragon, which is also in Revelation 13 it's referred to as the dragon, and 17 the beast. So John, we didn't go into detail, but it's commonly agreed upon that the head one represents Egypt, head 2 is Assyria, and then where Daniel, associated with Daniel's vision, is where head 3 comes in, which is Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then head 6 would be Rome. And so today we'll talk about Rome, because the majority of Christians associate the 7th head that has the 10 horns with Rome. So we're going to look at why is that. So one of the more common writers / theologians that is one of the major authorities on Rome as the 7th beast is a person or a guy named Alexander Hislop. He was a prominent figure within Protestantism in Scotland. So he came out of Scotland back in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, and he wrote a book called The Two Babylons. So just a quick quote out of that book. It's a short, I guess you may not call it a book, it's more of like an essay. He says, "There has never been any difficulty in the mind of any enlightened Protestant in identifying the woman." So the woman he's referring to is Babylon. The majority of people approach this woman, Babylon, this great city of Babylon, a little differently than what we've been discussing. There never has been any difficulty in the mind of any enlightened Protestant in identifying the woman sitting on the 7 mountains with the Roman apostasy. No other city in the world has ever been celebrated as the city of Rome has, for its situation on 7 hills. So in his mind, and he does present a lot of good case study on why Babylon and the 7th beast is Rome. If you ever get a chance to read, or I would recommend reading The Two Babylons, not only just to get a differing viewpoint, but he goes into depth on the influence that Babylonian religion had on a lot of other cultures. So the common view, the fact, because if you know, as we read, the beast has 7 heads, and Rome was situated on 7 hills, which are Palatine, Capitoline, Quirinal, Viminal, Esquiline, Kellyan, and the Aventine Hills. And you can actually, I think some of their coinage shows Rome, the woman sitting on these 7 hills. So that's one imagery that they associate with Rome. This, yeah, 7 literal hills. So then they equate that to, obviously, the Church of Rome. So the Church of Rome, or, you know, as we know it, the Catholic Church, which has its seat at the headquarters on the 7 hills of Rome, is appropriately called Babylon. So they associate the religion, or the Catholic religion, as this woman, Babylon. They also associate the Pope as a representative of Belshazzar. Who is Belshazzar again?
That was the last king of Babylon. Because Belteshazzar was Daniel, Belshazzar, or was I confusing the two?
Yeah, hold on here. I should have had this ready.
It was in Daniel chapter 5. Talks about at the very beginning of it, King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his lords with whom he drank, and he pulled out all the
Temple
all the temple
artifacts and
artifacts,
yep.
and was using them as stuff for the party.
Yeah. So it'd be like taking our, I mean, it doesn't have much worth to us, but like our offering plates and, you know, making jello shooters, you know, and throwing party.
When you're saying they, are you talking about in book to Babylon?
No, so this is within mainstream Christianity. This is
Yeah, 'cause
the
I
common
I know
thought.
that the Adventists teach that the Catholic Church
Is Babylon.
is Babylon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very common belief. And I was of the same mind as well.
I don't believe the Catholic Church.
Except for the Catholic Church,
I
yeah.
don't believe the Catholic Church feels this way
Right.
about them.
In fact, if you Google is the Catholic Church Babylon, first couple links are, you know, the rebuttal from the Catholic Church. Absolutely not.
Then it's not very surprising that a bunch of protesters against the Catholic Church would be calling the Catholic Church
Yeah,
the seventh beast.
we'll get to that. All right, so they say, you know, that the Pope is representative of Belshazzar because the glorious, I mean, when you walk into a Catholic church, I mean, it's not, a lot of those churches are very, they don't skimp on the presentation, right? There's a lot of effort into providing an environment of, you know, that feels holy. And many of the idol practices of Babylon were inherited during the formation of the Church of Rome. Now, this isn't my thoughts. These are, you know, I'm just presenting to you the common viewpoint. So Jeff, don't throw tomatoes at me.
If you do, can we get a video of it?
I love your mom's idea.
Why, was there some tomatoes?
That
I
probably
would love to throw
I
some.
know. You don't intend to.
Oh, I know, I kind of think.
So when they say that Babylon inherited much of the practices the Catholic Church inherited much of the practices of Babylon. So one of the chief gods of Babylon was, and we've discussed this, was Semiramis, who is the mother / lover of of who? Nimrod. Okay. So Semiramis or Rhea, also Venus, was represented among the Babylonians with a cup. So a lot of the imagery that they found in some of the ancient temples and stuff shows Semiramis that holds a cup, and this is why a lot of the common thought is this is why God uses the imagery of this woman with a gold cup, the golden cup. We read this, the woman with the golden cup in her hand, that all nations are drinking of the wine of her fornication. So the Jews would have been familiar with the Babylonian god and this imagery. So with that, the Roman Church has taken the very symbol as her own chosen emblem. So in 1825, on the occasion of the year of Jubilee, which is the year of forgiveness and punishment of sin, Pope Leo the, seventh, struck a medal bearing on the one side his own image and on the other that of the Church of Rome, which is symbolized as a woman holding in her left hand a cross and in her right a cup with the legend around her, set at super universum, the whole world is her seat. So Alexander Hyssop is, in some of his cases, he's presenting the similarities between the Babylonian gods and the adaptation that the Church of Rome
That's Pope
took.
12.
Is it? Oh yeah, sorry,
It's
Pope 12.
XII, which is 10,
Yep.
11.
Yep,
12.
sorry. I was thinking of V. Thanks for the correction. Okay, so this is the image, the coin or the metal piece that they're referring to. So on one side is Pope Leo, and then on the other is the Church of Rome. So she's got a cross in her left hand and a cup in her right. Yeah, to hide the bald spot.
It turns out to be the hat that is on the statue that's in the harbor of, I forget what that harbor is, but it's in New York.
The Statue of Liberty?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
How'd you forget that? She's wearing a Pope hat?
No, she's wearing the same hat as the
Oh.
Semiramis. Or whatever that coin is on.
Okay. Also, the common thought is that the Church of Rome, Catholic Church, developed its hierarchy from Babylon's example. So Babylon's objective was to bind all mankind in blind and absolute submission to a hierarchy entirely dependent on the sovereigns of Babylon. So in carrying out the scheme, all knowledge, sacred and profane, came to be monopolized by the priesthood within Babylon, and who dealt it out to those who were initiated in the mysteries exactly as they saw fit. So essentially, the leaders within the hierarchy were the dispensers of knowledge, and they only dispensed it as they saw fit. And if you've read, the history of the Church of Rome, they followed a very similar structure. So the leaders, the Pope, and the bishops were, well, most of the people were illiterate, so they were by default the only people that could present the knowledge to the people. And if I remember right, there was an initiative to keep the people ignorant, to keep them illiterate. So thus the people, wherever the Babylonian system spread, were bound neck and heel to the priests, as the priests were the only depositories of religious knowledge. Also, the Church of Rome adopted the triune God with 3 heads and 1 body, or the Godhead. So I know we've kind of had some lessons on, the Trinity and how, a lot of that thought is rooted in other religions. And Alexander Hyssop does a good job of, bringing that out from Babylon being not necessarily Babylon, but from the plains of Assyria, which is essentially the Chaldeans, who are the Babylonians. They're basically the creators of that belief system of a Trinity type God. So this triune God with the 3 head on 1 body, or what I think even in some translations of the Bible it uses the Godhead. So there's the idea of this one entity, but it's distinctly 3 persons that hold a different office, right? So the Father holds one office, the Son holds another office, and then the Holy Spirit holds that office. So this was established from early Babylon, where writings indicate a father figure, which is Nimrod, or Marduk, which was their chief god, his seed, and an imagery of wings and the tail of a bird, so which would represent the spiritual aspect of the father, or Nimrod. So over time, the Babylonian godhead developed to become the father Marduk, or Nimrod, the mother Semiramis, who held the seed, and the divine son. So Alexander Hyssop equates this to the Church of Rome's inclination to elevate the Mother Mary. So she is basically an emulation of, or the propensity to elevate the mother, or which was kind of taken from the Babylonian approach with Semiramis. Does that make sense? Okay. And then this is actually an image of Semiramis and their son, which is, in their religion is like a offshoot of Nimrod, right? His seed, but they consider him to be Nimrod in a sense, or Marduk. Some other examples as to why Rome is thought to be the woman. So the Catholic Inquisition, which was an entity set up within the church to combat heresy, not just against pagan nations and witches, but against God-fearers as well. So, they state that the Church of Rome, murdered many people. The estimate is anywhere between 30 to 300,000 that were persecuted, and many of those were forced to accept Christ or face punishment. So free will and understanding were absent within their approach. And then also the doctrine of the universal church, which, Catholic means universal, is one of the most damaging doctrines that to the true function of how the church is supposed to operate. So far, so good? Following? So those are, again, and you can read I mean, it's, I don't know, 150 pages worth of information that Alexander presents. But a lot of it, like I said, goes into the influence that Babylon's had on religions. In fact, he goes into like some of the different religions, such as Hinduism and Buddhism, and how you can the story, or the story of creation and how mankind was created is present throughout those religions and their similarities, as well as this mother and child imagery of like Mary and Jesus, and Semiramis and Marduk. A similar representation is also present in Hinduism with, I think it's, I don't want to murder it. Let's see. Brahma, yeah, Brahma.
There's like 1,063 different gods in Hinduism.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than that in Hinduism.
But similar to the Chaldeans, they had their chief gods.
Yeah, and then they have offshoots. But I think they really, like including, and that includes like the demons and stuff that they and whatnot. There's a lot.
I'll just read this really quick from his writings. The Babylonians, in their popular religion, supremely worshipped a goddess mother and a son, who was represented in pictures and in images as an infant or child in his mother's arms. From Babylon, the worship of the mother and the child spread to the ends of the earth. In Egypt, the mother and the child were worshipped under the names of Isis and Osiris. In India, even to this day, as Isi and Iswara. In Asia, as Cybele and Dioias. In pagan Rome, as Fortuna and Jupiter. In Greece, as Ceres, the great mother, and the babe at her breast, or as Irene, the goddess of peace, with the boy Plutus in her arms. And even in Tibet, in China, and Japan, the Jesuit missionaries were astonished to find the counterpart of Madonna and her child as devoutly worshipped as in Papal Rome itself. Xingmu, the Holy Mother in China, being represented with the child in her arms and a glory around her, exactly as if a Roman Catholic artist had been employed to set her up. So, some issues that exist with, looking at Rome as the seventh beast or as Babylon. As Paul mentioned, obviously there's a history between Protestants and Catholics, right? I mean, even now to this day, there's wars going on between the two religions. Ireland is one example. I mean, it's still pretty hostile in regions of Ireland between the two religions. Scotland, where Alexander Hyssop came from. So there's definitely a, I don't know what the word is. There's definitely some bias writings from, some people like Alexander Hyssop. They've already have, I mean, they came out of that church. They were persecuted by that church. There's a long-standing history between those two religions, so it would be very hard to put that aside and think objectively when you're approaching, this subject. So, if you accept that idea of Rome as being Babylon or the seventh beast, just keep that in mind, that many of the writings potentially are from from someone that has already started writing it with a negative viewpoint on Catholicism. So as we read in Revelation, this city, this great city Babylon, at its zenith has become very influential and wealthy. Why can we say that? When the city's destroyed, what happens? Let's go to Revelation chapter 18. So if you remember in chapter 17, we read that this Babylon, this harlot, will be destroyed by the last beast. So in her destruction, in chapter 18, let's start in verse 9. So this is after her destruction. The kings of the earth who went whoring with her and shared her luxury will sob and wail over her when they see the smoke as she burns, standing at a distance for fear of her torment. They will say, "Oh no, the great city Babel, the mighty city, in a single hour your judgment has come." The world's businessmen weep and mourn over her because no one is buying their merchandise anymore. Stocks of gold and silver, gems and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, all rare woods, all ivory goods, all kinds of things made of scented woods, brass, iron, and marble, cinnamon, cardamom, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, flour, grain, cattle, sheep, horses, chariots, and bodies, and people's souls. The fruits, so slaves, essentially, right? So she's dealing in slaves also. The fruits you lusted for with all your heart have gone. All the luxury and flashiness have been destroyed, never to return. The sellers of these things who got rich from her will stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and mourning and saying, "Oh no, the great city used to wear fine linen, purple and scarlet. She glittered with gold, precious stones and pearls, such great wealth, and a single hour ruined. All the ship's masters, passengers and sailors, and everyone making his living from the sea stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke as she burned. What city was like the great city? And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, saying, "Oh no, the great city, the abundance of her wealth, made all the ship owners rich. In a single hour she is ruined. Rejoice over her. Heaven rejoice, people of God, emissaries and prophets, for in judging her, God has vindicated you." So obviously a city with, extreme wealth and relations with surrounding nations, right, through trade, commerce. So if it is in fact the Church of Rome, because right now currently, what is the economic system of the Church of Rome? How do they make their income? Is it through trade?
No, like any church, most of their income is going to be from people giving money in the form of
Yeah.
tithes.
Well, so they equate this great city to be the Vatican. So how does the Vatican make its profits? Like you said, it's through tithes, but the majority of it's through tourism. Last I looked, they're the 18th wealthiest nation in the world, and that was all done through tourism. So their economic system would have to change, to fit this description of this city. So this city is dealing in trade and is extremely wealthy. And it's many other nations are benefiting from her wealth. So that's one issue that I see is the economic system currently is set up much differently than the city represented in Revelation. Agree, disagree?
I agree. It doesn't really match generally what we would think of the economic setup of most countries.
Okay.
A J something in, it's a port city in the Middle East.
What's that?
There's a port city in the Middle East, I just can't remember where. It starts with a J. It's about like some odd 100 miles away from the,
It's to the west of Mecca, right?
yeah,
Yeah. We'll get to that.
I was thinking about that one.
All right. So that's one instance. So the ideology of the Catholic Church would need to turn direction. So as we get into the time frame, of what it is we're reading about the seventh and eighth beast, there's a huge uprising against Jerusalem, and currently, from my understanding, the Catholic Church doesn't have deep anti-Semitic inclinations, right? Jeff? Yeah.
It's not something that we see in this country. I don't know if the situation has changed in Europe since World War II time frame.
So you think
there was a lot, there's some things I've read that, and it's not just the Catholic Church, because it was the Protestants that were the same way in Europe. And so, and we can still see it in the way some national leaders, just the way that they talk, the way that you hear things talked about in the UN.
Yeah.
So, we don't see it in this country. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, though.
Okay.
So,
Right. But they're Russian Orthodox majority. That's their state religion.
there are other religions that
Right.
far more,
They have a higher degree of,
there's a much higher degree
Yeah.
of anti-Semitism.
yeah. Okay.
No, I was thinking about Germany, but that's probably not it. But
Pretty atheistic now these days.
Yeah.
against Judaism,
No, they're pretty atheistic these days. So Beverly has a sister there. And very quickly, Germany's pretty chill. They don't want to make that mistake again. But if you go to the south, if you go to the south in the United States, a lot of the churches they're pretty anti-Semitic, which is kind of weird. Big
In the
Christian
South?
Muslims.
That's new to me.
Is it?
I,
Yeah,
huh.
it's really weird that they're like.
Why do you say that? You have experience with that?
Yeah.
Really?
Texas, anyway.
Hmm.
I'm not saying all the churches down there are like that. I'm just saying that. Heard it preached.
So one of the other points that a lot of the Protestants use is the fact that the extreme number of believers that the Catholic Church persecuted. But if you read throughout history, the Catholic Church isn't the only religion that has highly persecuted believers.
Those that protested the Catholic Church also protested others.
Yeah. Also, out of order. So I brought up the fact that the Catholic Church established its hierarchy system based on Babylon structure. And Alexander Hyssop kind of uses that as an indication that the Catholic Church is solely only one of the only major religions that has followed that system.
Of course, Hislop would be blind to the fact that Protestants also follow the whole universal church idea,
Correct.
also follow the Trinity.
Right. Depending on where you're at in your Protestant, what region.
There are, even in our numbers.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying just like in our, in our group, there's also Protestants that don't adhere to that doctrine either. So, but anyway, so the Church of Rome or the Catholic Church isn't the only religion that has established a similar hierarchy. Can anybody think of any other religions that have established a hierarchical system like the Church of Rome? Scientologists, yeah. The Mormons, Islam is very similar. I mean, you don't go to an individual for forgiveness, but other than that, they have a hierarchical system very similar to Babylon's. And then, as we discussed, the Vatican's economic system would need to be, significantly revamped to fit, this imagery of Babylon, the great city. So those are some general points as to why, you can't assign Rome to Babylon without some rebuttals. It's not. There's some points that don't fit.
I forget, when did Hislop write this book?
It was first published in 1853, and then expanded in 1858.
So, I would say that the Catholic Church probably had greater influence back at that time.
Yeah.
Well before Vatican II, so before Vatican II, church services was all done in Latin. So, a language that's not readily used by most common people. So,
Right.
even when you're attending church, whatever the Catholic priest is doing up there, you wouldn't really understand it unless you're well versed in the Latin language.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and it's been a tendency throughout history to assign, this harlot to, you know, whatever nation is or religion is the most despicable. You know, during World War II, it was Germany. You know, many believed that Germany was Babylon. There was a period when I was a kid when the Mormon Church was expanding exponentially, and you know, there were some things coming to light on what they did during, you know, the establishment of the colonies and the corruption that went on there. And so there was a decent amount of, you know, people within the churches I were going to that thought that the Mormon religion was Babylon. So it, you know, and that's why, you know, as next weekend I'm going to go into, you know, who I think the Babylon and the seventh beast is. But, you know, I would approach with caution, because it's, you know, in our lifetime it's a nation and religion that has negatively influenced us. So, you know, it's kind of it's a common tendency to assign it to whoever's, you know, the more powerful influence of our time period. So, okay, that's all I had. It's 5 after. You can break